They tried to move on with someone else, and maybe, for a while, it looked like they had. Maybe they smiled in pictures, maybe they answered messages differently, maybe they acted like their life had settled into a new rhythm, like whatever happened between you and them was just another chapter they had closed. But here is the part they never said out loud. Something in them never fully left. Not because the other person was meaningless, not because every part of their life was fake, but because there are some connections that do not end just because someone chooses another direction. There are some people you do not simply forget. You may bury the feeling. You may distract yourself. You may convince everyone around you that you're fine. But deep inside, the truth keeps breathing. And that is what happened to them. They walked into another situation thinking it would make everything easier. They thought distance would calm the noise. They thought time would prove that what they felt for you was temporary. They thought being close to someone else would erase the memory of your presence. But instead, something strange happened. The more they tried to live without that truth, the louder it became inside them. At first, they ignored it. They told themselves it was just memory, just attachment, just old emotion, just the mind playing tricks. They tried to reduce what they felt into something small enough to control. But real connection does not become small because someone is afraid of it. It waits, it stays quiet, it watches what a person chooses. And then, when the distractions fade and the night becomes still, it comes back with one question. Why did you run from the one thing that felt real? That question followed them longer than they want to admit. It showed up in simple moments, in the silence after a conversation, in the middle of an ordinary day, in a place, a song, a smell, a sentence, a memory they did not invite but could not stop from entering. They would be sitting beside someone else, physically present, doing all the right things, saying all the expected words, and still, somewhere in the background of their heart, there was you. Not loudly, not dramatically, just there, and sometimes that is the most powerful kind of presence. The one that does not beg to be noticed. The one that does not fight for attention. The one that simply remains. They did not choose the other path because you were not enough. That is the lie your pain may have tried to tell you. But the truth is much more uncomfortable than that. They chose what felt safer. They chose what required less courage. They chose the place where they could stay in control, where they did not have to expose the deeper parts of themselves, where they did not have to answer the difficult questions your connection brought to the surface, because you did not just make them feel loved, you made them feel seen. And being seen can be terrifying for someone who has spent a long time hiding from themselves. You touched something in them they were not ready to deal with. You awakened a part of them that wanted truth, depth, honesty, and emotional responsibility, and instead of stepping forward into that, they stepped back into what felt manageable. That is what people do when they are not ready. They do not always choose the person who matters most. Sometimes they choose the life that asks the least from them, and that choice may bring comfort for a while. But comfort is not the same as peace. Comfort can keep a person busy. It can give them routine. It can give them something to explain to others. It can make their life appear stable from the outside. But peace is different. Peace does not ask you to lie to yourself. Peace does not require you to silence the deepest truth inside your chest. Peace does not make you avoid your own heart. And slowly, they began to understand that. They began to feel the difference between a life that looks fine and a life that feels honest. That was the beginning of their inner conflict, because from the outside things may have looked calm. They may have had someone around them. They may have had plans, conversations, routines, and distractions. But inside, something was unsettled. Something kept pulling their attention back to the part of their story they had not finished. That part was you. And no matter how hard they tried to rename it, deny it, or push it away, it remained unfinished. Have you ever felt that? Like someone left, but the connection did not? Like the conversation ended, but the energy remained? Like both of you moved into different spaces, but something invisible still existed between you? That is not weakness. That is not obsession. Sometimes that is simply what happens when two people meet at a depth they are not prepared to handle. The bond does not disappear just because the timing was wrong. The feeling does not vanish just because one person got scared. The truth does not stop being true just because someone chooses silence instead of honesty. And this is where they are now. They are no longer able to pretend they did not feel it. They are no longer able to hide behind easy explanations. They are no longer able to say even to themselves that it meant nothing. Because it did mean something, it meant more than they were willing to admit. And that admission has not been easy for them. It has come slowly, quietly, painfully, not like a dramatic movie scene where everything becomes clear in 1 second. No. Real realization often arrives in pieces. A small thought here, a memory there, a strange heaviness in the chest, a moment of comparison they did not mean to make, a feeling that something is missing even when everything appears to be in place. That is how truth returns, not always as a storm, sometimes as a whisper that refuses to leave. They began to notice how different things felt without your energy. They noticed that the other connection did not reach the same place inside them. It may have been easier, it may have been calmer, it may have been more predictable, but it did not challenge them in the same way. It did not awaken the same honesty. It did not carry the same emotional weight, and that difference became impossible to ignore. They started to realize that what they had with you was not just attraction. It was not just chemistry. It was not just a passing emotional high. It was recognition. That is deeper. Recognition is when something in another person feels familiar before you fully understand why. It is when their presence reaches places in you that words cannot explain. It is when you feel exposed and comforted at the same time. It is when someone brings out both your light and your fear, because they are standing close to the truth of who you are. That is what scared them, not you. The truth. They were not running from your love. They were running from what your love required them to become. And that is a hard thing for a person to admit, because it is easier to say the timing was wrong. It is easier to say I was confused. It is easier to say life happened. But sometimes the honest sentence is much simpler. I was afraid. They were afraid of how real it felt, afraid of losing control, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of choosing something that might change them completely. Afraid of standing in front of someone who could see through their excuses, afraid that if they gave themselves fully to that connection, they would no longer be able to hide from the parts of themselves they had been avoiding for years. So they chose distance, they chose another direction, they chose what looked easier, and you were left trying to understand why someone could feel so much and still walk away. That question may have hurt you deeply, because when someone leaves while the feeling is still alive, it creates a wound that logic cannot close. You keep asking yourself what you missed. You replay moments. You question your worth. You wonder if you imagined the depth. You wonder if they ever cared at all. But listen carefully. You did not imagine it. You felt something because something was there. The problem was not that the connection was unreal. The problem was that they were not strong enough at that time to hold it. And there is a difference. A person can feel deeply and still act poorly. A person can care and still avoid responsibility. A person can know your value and still fail to treat you with the respect that value deserves. This is why you must be careful not to confuse their fear with your lack. Their inability to choose you fully was not proof that you were unworthy. It was proof that they were divided within themselves. And now that division has become painful for them. Because the thing about avoidance is that it feels useful at first. It gives temporary relief. It allows a person to escape the immediate pressure of being honest. It helps them move through the day without having to face the full weight of what they feel. But avoidance always sends a bill later. And now they are paying it. They are paying it through memories they cannot silence, through questions they cannot answer, through the uncomfortable awareness that they may have walked away from someone who was never truly replaceable. That is not a small realization. It can shake a person from the inside, because once they see it clearly, they cannot unsee it. Once they understand that they chose safety over truth, they cannot keep pretending that their choices were harmless. They begin to see the impact of their hesitation. They begin to understand what their silence did. They begin to recognize how their inconsistency may have made you doubt yourself. And that awareness brings regret. Not the loud, performative kind of regret that seeks attention, not the kind that says dramatic things just to be forgiven quickly. A deeper regret. The quiet kind. The kind that sits with them when no one else is watching. The kind that appears when life slows down and there is nothing left to hide behind. The kind that says, you knew this mattered, and you still ran. That is the message they carry now. It may never come out perfectly. It may not arrive in the words you once hoped to hear. It may not even arrive at all. But internally, something has shifted. They know now. They know that you were not just another person. They know that what happened between you had meaning. They know that their fear cost them something valuable. And they know that even if they tried to move forward, a part of them remained tied to the truth they left behind. Comment, still here, if you have ever felt someone leave your life physically but remain present emotionally, because that is exactly what this is. It is the strange ache of an unfinished connection, the kind where two people separate but the energy does not fully break, the kind where one person tries to bury the feeling while the other person tries to heal from the confusion. And then, later, when enough time has passed, the one who ran starts to feel the weight of what they avoided. That does not mean you must wait. That does not mean you must open the door again. That does not mean their realization automatically deserves access to your life. This is important. Do not romanticize someone's regret so much that you forget your own healing. Their awakening is not your obligation. Their growth is not your responsibility. Their pain does not erase what you had to survive. Yes, they may finally understand. Yes, they may finally see your worth. Yes, they may finally admit, even if only to themselves, that you were the person who reached them in a way no one else did. But the question now is not only what they feel. The question is what you know. Do you know your own value now? Do you know what you deserve? Do you know the difference between a person who misses you and a person who's ready to meet you with honesty? Because missing someone is not enough. Regret is not enough. Awareness is not enough. A person can miss you and still not be mature enough to love you properly. A person can regret losing you and still not have the courage to rebuild trust. A person can realize your worth and still fail to show up with the consistency your heart needs. So do not get lost in the idea that their feelings alone are proof of change. Change must have shape. It must have action. It must have accountability. It must have patience, humility, and respect. If they ever come back with a message, listen with your eyes open, not from bitterness, not from fear, but from wisdom. You're not the same person who once waited for unclear answers. You're not standing in the same emotional place. You have lived through confusion. You have carried the silence. You have questioned yourself and then slowly found your way back to your own center. That matters. Your growth matters too. While they were avoiding the truth, you were being shaped by it. While they were choosing comfort, you were learning strength. While they were trying to distract themselves, you were learning how to sit with pain and still become whole. That is not small. That is transformation. And this is the part many people forget. The person who returns is not the only one who has changed. You have changed too. You have learned that love without clarity can become a cage. You have learned that emotional intensity does not always equal emotional safety. You have learned that someone can feel like home and still not know how to build one with you. And because of that, your standards are different now. You no longer want half presence. You no longer want beautiful words with weak actions. You no longer want a connection that keeps you guessing. You want honesty. You want emotional maturity. You want someone who does not need to lose you completely before they understand your value. That is not asking too much. That is self-respect. And maybe this is why their realization feels so heavy now, because the version of you they remember may not be the version of you they can return to. The old you may have waited longer. The old you may have accepted less. The old you may have confused their pain with proof that you should try again. But the person you are becoming is different. You can have compassion without surrendering your boundaries. You can understand their fear without excusing the damage. You can acknowledge the connection without making it your prison. That is emotional maturity. And maybe on some level they can feel that too. They can feel that you are no longer standing there with open hands, begging for an explanation. They can feel that your energy has changed. They can feel that the door is no longer wide open just because they have finally realized what they lost. And that creates another kind of pressure inside them, because now they are not only facing the truth of what they felt, they are also facing the possibility that their realization came too late. That is one of the hardest lessons in life. Sometimes people awaken after the moment has passed. Sometimes they understand the value of something only after the person who offered it has grown beyond the need to prove it. Sometimes they come back with the truth, but the truth no longer has the same power over you. Not because you stopped caring in a cold way, but because you started caring for yourself more. And that changes everything. They may have been with someone else, but emotionally they were still carrying pieces of the connection they had with you. They may have tried to build something stable, but stability without depth can feel empty after a while. They may have told themselves they were fine, but the body remembers what the mind tries to deny. That is why they could not fully escape it. Because you represented something real, not perfect, not easy, not always peaceful, but real. And real things leave a mark. They do not disappear simply because someone chooses distraction. They do not vanish because someone avoids a conversation. They do not lose meaning because another person enters the picture. Real connection becomes part of a person's inner history. It changes how they compare. It changes what they notice. It changes what silence feels like. It changes the questions they ask themselves when no one else is around. And now they are asking those questions. They are asking why they felt more alive when they were emotionally honest with you. They are asking why something in them still responds to your memory. They are asking why the safer choice never fully satisfied the deeper part of them. They're asking why, after all this time, your presence still has weight. And the answer is simple. Because what they felt was not finished. It was avoided. There is a difference between something ending naturally and something being abandoned out of fear. A natural ending brings grief, but also understanding. You know why it closed. You understand the lesson. You may still hurt, but there is a kind of completion. But an avoided connection leaves fragments, unsaid words, unfinished feelings, unanswered questions, emotional echoes. That is what they carry, and maybe that is why this message feels urgent inside them now. Not because they suddenly became perfect, not because everything is magically healed, but because the truth has become too heavy to keep buried. They want to say something like this: I thought I could move on by choosing what was easier. I thought I could make the feeling fade by putting distance between us. I thought if I stayed busy enough, if I gave my attention somewhere else, if I kept going, eventually I would stop feeling what I felt for you. But I did not. I carried it. Quietly. Sometimes angrily, sometimes with guilt, sometimes with confusion. Are they reaching for you because their current life feels empty, or because they finally understand what it means to show up fully? There is a difference, a big one. Do not let their late realization pull you back into an old pattern if the foundation has not changed. You are not a place someone gets to visit whenever their avoidance becomes painful. You are not an emotional shelter for someone who refused to build honestly with you when they had the chance. You are a person, a whole person, with a heart that deserves care, clarity, and consistency. So yes, maybe they could not fully leave you emotionally. Maybe they compared others to you. Maybe they thought of you in quiet moments. Maybe they now understand that they chose comfort instead of truth. But your value does not begin when they finally notice it. Your value was there the whole time, before they saw it, before they lost it, before they regretted it, before they carried this message inside them. That is the truth you must hold, because once you understand this, you stop waiting for someone else's realization to validate what you already know. You stop asking, "Was I enough?" And you start asking, "Were they ready enough?" That question changes everything, because often the answer is no. They were not ready enough, not honest enough, not brave enough, not grounded enough, not emotionally mature enough to meet you where you stood. And that does not make you less. It simply means the connection asked more from them than they were prepared to give. Now they are seeing that. Now they are living with the emotional consequences of their own avoidance. Now they are understanding that choosing the easy road does not always lead to peace. And maybe this realization will change them. Maybe it will make them more honest. Maybe it will make them more accountable. Maybe it will teach them not to run the next time life places something real in front of them, but your journey cannot be paused while they learn lessons they should have learned when they had access to you. You must keep moving, not with bitterness, not with revenge, not with the need to prove anything. Move with calm power. Move knowing that what was real does not need to be begged for. Move knowing that the right person will not require losing you to understand you. Move knowing that love should not feel like convincing someone to have courage. And if they do come forward, let them meet the version of you that has grown. Not the version that was desperate for answers. Not the version that tolerated confusion. Not the version that made excuses for emotional absence. Let them meet the version of you that listens carefully, speaks honestly, and chooses from self-respect. Because that is who you are becoming. Someone who can love deeply without abandoning yourself. Someone who can forgive without forgetting the lesson. Someone who can feel compassion without sacrificing peace. Someone who knows that a connection may be powerful, but it still has to be healthy. And that is the final truth here. This story is not only about them realizing your worth. It is about you realizing your own. It is about understanding that even if they were involved with someone else, even if they tried to move forward, even if they acted like everything was fine, the truth eventually caught up with them. But you do not need to chase that truth anymore. You do not need to force a confession. You do not need to prove the connection was real. You felt it. You lived it. You healed from the confusion of it. And now you get to choose what happens next from a place of strength. Maybe the next chapter includes a conversation. Maybe it includes closure. Maybe it includes forgiveness. Maybe it includes a new beginning. Or maybe it includes you walking forward without turning back, finally free from the need to understand every detail of why they did what they did. Whatever comes next, let it come from clarity, not from fear, not from loneliness, not from the ache of what could have been. Let it come from the person you are now, the person who knows that love must be more than intensity. It must be honest, it must be present, it must be consistent, it must be brave, and anything that cannot meet you with those things does not deserve to keep pulling you back into uncertainty. So take a breath. Let the truth settle. They may have carried you inside them longer than they admitted. They may have finally realized what they lost. They may have a message sitting heavy in their heart. But you also have something now. You have wisdom. You have boundaries. You have a deeper understanding of your own worth. And that is more powerful than waiting. That is freedom. Because the moment you stop needing their regret to prove your value, you become untouchable in a quiet, beautiful way. You no longer wait for someone to return and explain your importance to you. You already know. You are real. You are meaningful. You are not easy to replace. And the right person will not need to lose you to understand that. Like this video, if this message reached something deep in you, comment which part felt the most personal. And subscribe for more reflections on emotional truth, self-worth, healing, and the quiet strength it takes to choose yourself when someone else finally realizes what they had too late.